There was a point in time when Labour could reverse that with a popular leader and an ideological commitment to fixing that shit, but they lost it.
Thanks very much. We'll check back in with you a little bit later. Appreciate it.
Good evening from Nottingham, where Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer have clashed over tax, immigration and welfare in their final head-to-head debate before polling day next Thursday. It was a heated confrontation during which they faced questions from a live audience behind me who challenged them to explain and justify their stance on integrity in politics, the cost of living and Brexit. Well, our political editor, Chris Mason, is here. What stood out for you, Chris?
For me tonight, Rita, it was all about the tone. It was all about the exchanges as opposed to the content. I mean, of course the content matters, but much of that will be familiar to regular viewers over the last 5 weeks or so. But it was the exchanges that defined tonight. It was a more free-flowing debate than we've seen in previous debates in this campaign. There was more anger, there was more passion, there was more jeopardy. Rishi Sunak had nothing to lose tonight, and that defined his approach, I thought.
What's worse, UK or US politics, they're the same. They're literally it's the same situation. It's a lock for Labour to win. But like, one still has the NHS, yeah, barely. Not for long. Why is Starmer bad? I don't understand. Starmer is literally the exact same thing as the modern Democratic Party. It's just like a lighter version of Tory politics. I mean, I'm sure that John Oliver, yeah, it's here. Don't worry. We have that on the docket. We'll get to that.
He really went for it. You could feel that. Keir Starmer had everything to lose, and you could sense that too. But he was much more aggressive than he was a few weeks back when the equivalent programme took place on ITV. I think he'd kicked himself a bit after that debate for being insufficiently aggressive as he might have seen it. Tonight, the scripted put-downs were there from both of them. The things that they anticipate might be clipped up on social media in the coming minutes and hours and circulate with a half-life between now and polling day. They were prepped. They were conscious of what was at stake. It was quite a watch.
When this campaign started, it felt like spring. Summer has finally arrived, for now at least, here in Nottingham. And so too, the two men wanting to be Prime Minister the weekend after next.
Good evening.
Tonight, the beginning of the sprint finish to polling day. First up, Sue, and you probably won't be surprised by her question.
People are dismayed by the lack of integrity and honesty in politics today. After the recent allegations about political betting, how would you restore trust in politics?
This takes leadership. What I did when one of my team was alleged to have been involved and investigated by the Gambling Commission, they were suspended within minutes.
I was furious to hear about these things. That's why I've dealt with it. But the choice of this election is about, as Sue said, it's about leadership, it's about integrity in politics, and that's a question about doing what you say. You know, Keir Starmer's made this broader point, but the point is he's changed his mind on every major position that he's taken.
Sir Keir jabbed back. What about wider questions of culture in government, he asked.
This isn't just, what's happened this week, last week in the Gambling Commission. We saw Partygate earlier in this Parliament. The Prime Minister himself was convicted and fined for breaking the rules which he brought in and imposed on everybody else.
Next, on to a question about benefits as the exchanges got more punchy, energised, personal.
And I just want to address Beverly's point.
You opposed it when I announced it. You literally opposed it.
If you listen to people in the audience across the country more often, you might not be quite so out of touch. Beverly...
You're going to have higher welfare under you, and that's why you can't deliver tax cuts the way that I can.
The Prime Minister
and people should not surrender to this.
If there's that much wrong with the system, who's the guy in charge of the system over the last 14 years? Why is it so bad?
Well, you want to be in charge, but you've got nothing to say to people about what you would do about it.
We're an island. Why can't we easily close our borders?
If Keir Starmer is your Prime Minister, all those illegal migrants will be out on our streets. And that is the choice for you. Do not surrender our borders to the Labour Party.
Steve, this is complete and utter nonsense.
On the numbers.
Sir Keir said, hang on.
If it were working, why are record numbers still coming under your watch, Prime Minister? How on earth can you say it's working?
Labour want more return agreement.
Bro, this is literally this is identical. Keir Starmer trying to outflank Rishi Sunak from the right on immigration. It's just identical. Do you understand why? Do you understand why I'm saying that, like, the Western civilization is falling apart, okay? Western liberal democracy is dying. And it is dying, and it's running over, it's basically running the same exact, like, fascism cycle that it did not that long ago. It hasn't even been, like, a full 100 years at this point. Hasn't even been a fucking full century, and they're running it back.
Which Rishi Sunak took the mickey out of.
Iran,
You can see.
Syria, Afghanistan. So when Keir Starmer says he's going to return people, is he going to sit down? Are you going to sit down with the Iranian Ayatollahs? Are you going to try and do a deal with the Taliban? It's completely nonsensical what you are saying, right?
Next, the economy, and Rishi Sunak returning to a favourite theme.
No, I say,
Wait, why not? Is that, like, out of the question? Like, that they just think that, like, Iran, for example, is just, like, led by, like, barbarian apes or something? Like, you can't even have a conversation with the leadership? Bro said diplomacy is for pussies. Yeah, but, like, also he's a pussy.
that the Labour Party's policies will mean all your taxes are going to go up by thousands of pounds. It is in their DNA. Mark my words. Your pension, your council tax, your home, your car, you name it, they will tax it.
Well, pensioners are not going to be better off with the Prime Minister who's making promises that he can't keep because they're not funded. That's exactly got wrong. We cannot... There's one thing that we cannot repeat at this election. Please do not go back to Liz Truss Mark II with this Prime Minister, because the same damage will follow.
The whole point of nights like this is the power lies with the audience in the room, and Robert made the most of it.
Mr Sunak, I think you made a fair job of being Chancellor, but you're a pretty mediocre Prime Minister. Sir Keir, I think that your strings are being pulled by very senior members of the Labour Party. Are you two really the best we've got to be the next Prime Minister of our great country?
My primary job was to deliver.
It is literally, bro. Again, identical, okay? Identical, bro.
Deliver that economic stability so I could start cutting your taxes. That is the journey we're now on. So whatever your other frustrations, the choice for you at this election is about the future.
It has to be rooted, if we're going to restore hope, in my view, in returning politics to service. The sense that you come into politics to serve.
And then...
Vicky in Oxfordshire, who asks this: will you protect women's right to single-sex spaces from any and all males, regardless of if they hold a GRC, a gender recognition certificate? Rishi Sunak?
Yeah, yes, unequivocally. I get that not all of you will agree with my position, right? But I'm being clear with you. Sex means biological sex. You have to change the Equalities Act to deliver the security of women's spaces and women's services. That's what I believe the right thing for our country is.
Keir Starmer said it was important to protect women's spaces and added...
I will treat them, as I treat all human beings, with dignity and respect. And I'll tell you for why.
Notice that they didn't show it, but he also said he's going to protect women's spaces. Again, it's literally the Joe Biden thing. It's like, yeah, immigrants are people. Also, we have to kill them. Trans people are people. Also, if they want to fucking piss, well, you're going to go to jail.
The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom standing in Parliament making an anti-trans joke in front of the mother of a murdered trans teenager. I will never, ever allow myself to be put into that position.
Brexit was discussed too, as were prospects.
He's like, I'll keep my anti-trans jokes private, thank you. Or maybe not in front of the mother. Even if I do it in public, it won't be in front of the mother. Bloody hell.
For young people, and then this flashpoint during their closing statements.
And before you make that choice, think what a Labour government would mean. Can you afford to pay at least £2,000 more in tax?
That is a lie.
Thank you
been
very
told
much.
not to repeat
And
that
this
lie, and
is-
he's just done it.
And this is your closing statement, Keir Starmer.
If you want to end 14 years of chaos and rebuild our country, then that power is in your hands.
And that was it. 5 weeks after this campaign began, its final set-piece moment had finished.
Chris Mason reporting there.
That's literally all he had to say, by the way. That's it. And that is the reason why it's a lock for Labour. It's because the Tories... It's because the Tories have literally destroyed the country. 14 years of austerity, 14 years of just like chaos, destruction, neoliberalism, which, by the way, Keir Starmer does not oppose either. The NHS is defunded. England is broke as fuck. And they did Brexit. Also, simultaneously, you got this reform shit going on, which I have on the docket. Don't worry. Keir made pledges to get the elected leader of the party, and I think he's gone back on all of them, at least most of them. Yeah. England is a complete fucking shithole at this point. I was in London yesterday, and a paper said that 72% of people don't like the Tories. Yeah. The Tories did that shit. Okay? The Tories did that shit, but like, there was a point in time when Labour could reverse that with a popular leader and an ideological commitment to fixing that shit, but they lost it.
And we'll hear from Chris again a little later in the programme. Now, in the BBC's first election debate earlier in the month, we spoke to representatives from the 7 biggest parties in Great Britain, which included the Conservatives and Labour. We asked the other 5 for their reaction to tonight's debate, and here's those who replied.
It was like a third-rate vaudeville act. The big things that should have been mentioned weren't mentioned. Scotland wasn't mentioned once. Brexit wasn't mentioned once, even in response to the question about the trade relationship with Europe. And austerity wasn't mentioned once. And for that reason, I think this election, and I've been in elections for 40 years now, represents the biggest fraud on the people of the UK and on Scotland that I've ever seen.
If you listen to the debate tonight, I think the gentleman in the audience who really hit the nail on the head was the gentleman who said, is this really the best that we've got? And actually what we've seen over the last few weeks is that many people have really made a human connection to Ed Davey, because he's demonstrated that we can make people laugh, we can make them cry, and that he has a real experience, a lifetime.
Yeah, she's a Lib Dem, okay? Like, who gives a fuck? Yeah, good luck, dude. Good luck on the elections.
Of experience.
I think it was the narrowness of the debate that was most shocking. And that's what happens when you leave out all the other parties from the debates, quite frankly. We had a conspiracy of silence from the 2 main parties on some of the key issues like the climate crisis, like the situation in Gaza, like no one standing up for issues like free movement. What we had were 2 men basically trying to outcompete each other to be as cruel as possible to some of the most vulnerable people like asylum seekers and refugees.
Deeply disappointed that the only mention of Wales was by Rishi Sunak, and he was referring to Wales as a political football, which doesn't look to me like a plan, a real plan there, which you'd like to talk about. And of course, there was a gentleman in the audience who asked, are these 2 the best on offer? And I think there will be many people who will agree with that.
Well, let's get a bit more detail on the claims made during the debate about immigration. BBC Verify's Nick Eardley is in the newsroom in London for us now. Nick.
Thanks, Rita. Yeah, some really heated exchanges and claims on small boats crossings. Here's a reminder of what was said.
The numbers have come down over the past 12 months compared to the 12 months before. But in order to fully solve this problem, you need a deterrent.
There are tens of thousands, 50,000 people.
They need Bernie Sanders' anti-vaxxer brother to fix the Labour Party.
Okay, let me unpack that and
They need the other Sanders, the British one. Y'all remember that guy? The one that's like a fucking firm anti-vaxxer? That's who they need, bro. No, not Corbyn, dude. No. Oh, it's Corbyn's brother, not Bernie Sanders' brother. Sorry. I got my shit mixed up. You're right. Corbyn's brother is the anti-vaxxer in the UK. Here. Piers Corbyn. British weather forecaster, anti-vaccine activist, conspiracy theorist, and former politician. What are your thoughts about Galloway? I don't really care. Bernie's brother also lives in the UK, I think, doesn't he?
And to cast our final
mention the names of our parents, Eli.
To my knowledge, he is not an anti-vaxxer. Piers Corbyn raps.
Don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine. Children, don't take the vaccine. Kids, don't take the vaccine. 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 Youngsters busting rifles from the east side. Bangkok, try run and get in feet right. Run government.
That's a fucking banger. Straight up, I'll say it. I'm not afraid to admit that. Real recognize real, dude.
Let me show you what's happened in the last few years. There is no doubt when you look at this graphic here that the number of small boats has gone up considerably overall. And when you add this...
Dude, by the way, also the media egging this shit on is also very America. You got two sides of the neoliberal coin, okay? Two leaders that are trying to outflank each other on reactionary politics with mainstream media directly fucking egging on the convo.
This together, Keir Starmer was right to say that 50,000...
Yeah. Keir Starmer was right to say that there's too many blacks and browns coming into the country with these little boats. We need to do something about it.
People have entered the country on small boats since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. But they were both using different calculations about what's happening right now. Because although it's not totally clear from this, it is true to say that small boats crossings are down over the last 12 months. They are down, as was claimed, 30%. However, look at that red line there. There have been a record number of people crossing the channel on small boats so far in 2024. So that's a bit context on why they could both make those claims that sounded contradictory on small boats. Now, through the whole campaign, both parties have been trading blows on tax and spending. And you probably noticed in his closing statement, the Prime Minister mentioned tax going up £2,000 for working families under Labour. A reminder, we've checked this one before. It risks misleading people, is based on questionable assumptions from political advisers. There is a lot more, Rita. Fact checkers from BBC Verify online now.
Thank you for that reminder. Thank you. Nick Eardley there. A last word now with Chris Mason. Where does this last debate leave the contenders then, Chris?
It leaves the two camps tonight, Rita, pondering how their men have done and beginning the spin to try and argue that their candidate has won. I'll just give you a little sense of that. Labour saying there was only one person who looked in the room like they were a Prime Minister, and it was Keir Starmer. The Conservatives saying that they're happy with the Prime Minister's performance and point to the fact that...
Labour said that, but racistly. Labour was like, there's only one man who looked like a real Prime Minister, and it's not the brown one. I love the restructuring of the Labour Party. It's great. It's been so wonderful. Slash We'll look at this in a second. Let's finish this, and then
Keir
we'll get
Starmer
back
had
to
no
it.
answer, they claim, on what he would do with illegal migrants. I think if we take a bit of a step back, this is a format that Rishi Sunak seems more comfortable in than Keir Starmer. His message discipline, Rishi Sunak's, was very noticeable tonight. A repeated phrase about don't surrender, the idea of the country being handed over, if you like, to Labour if Labour win the general election. From Labour's perspective, a definite strategy tonight, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, to be much, much more punchy. They knew that Rishi Sunak was likely to try and throw the kitchen sink at them, and they were trying to argue back in a similar kind of way without, so they hoped, losing an audience who might think it's far too interrupty, it's far too confrontational. What I'm struck by as a final thought is that the opinion polls have barely budged an inch in this campaign as far as the Conservatives and Labour are concerned, with Labour miles ahead. When you watch that debate tonight, it felt much more competitive than those polls might suggest. And a snap poll from YouGov suggested it was 50-50 in terms of the performance of each of them as far as the audience at home.
It's so funny. It's literally because that's how bad Keir Starmer is. That, like, Keir Starmer is so bad that, like, it causes British people to forget how bad Rishi Sunak is, okay?
Keir Starmer is presiding over a coup. And what comes after a coup? Dictatorship.